Kia ora everyone, welcome to this first rehearsal of Antigone for my Master of Design at AUT, via Zoom of course, thanks to another COVID lockdown. You are all so amazing in your online auditions and I'm really looking forward to what's going to be an amazing show with you wonderful actors. While I'm looking forward to us meeting next week in person, face to face, I just wanted to meet here first to make sure you're all comfortable. We will be implementing a few measures to keep us all safe during these unprecedented times, so if you could come to rehearsal with your mask on, that would be great. We will also be cleaning the rehearsal space and socially distancing when and where we can. We'll do the best that we can to make this a smooth and comfortable journey during these unprecedented times. Does anybody have any questions, by the way, before we begin?
Hi, Holly. Considering we've lost so much theatre here in Auckland over the last year of the pandemic, what's the reality of us actually being able to perform Antigone live to a real audience?
When I began this master's research in February of 2020, no one could have predicted the enormous impact the COVID pandemic would have on theatres locally and globally. Navigating an already marginalised culture of theatre performance here in New Zealand, the COVID pandemic forced us to recognise the fragility of our ancient art form and helped us to recognise our collective desire and love for the theatre. When making theatre in an underfunded and marginalised theatre culture, and especially during times of crisis, we practitioners must look to making our art on budgets, considering also time, resources and personnel, and how we can make theatre on sixpence and a sticky toffee. Shh! For this production of Antigone, I took on the roles of researcher, director, designer, scenographer, stage manager and production manager. Assuming these many roles, I was considering limitations that might be imposed on the productions with tighter pandemic restrictions and a limited timeline and budget afforded to the production for this project of the Master of Design. I cast my production with 6 actors to double as both the character roles, including Antigone, Creon and Tiresias, while also playing the ancient Greek chorus. I used only 1 lighting designer and 2 ushers to welcome and seat audience members. Together, we formed a bubble of 10. As the researcher, director, and designer, I was considering all the elements of dramaturgy and scenography. Edward Gordon Craig once said that to be a master of the theatre is to practice and understand all the arts of the theatre. A jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Scenography is the practice of combining theatre technologies, lighting, sound, costume, props, set. It is also the elements of drama, focus, action, role, time and tension, to create a sense of place that encompasses the environment or atmospheres of a drama. Dorita Hanna suggests that scenography can extend the performative body of an actor and is in itself performative. For me personally, scenography is a gateway to connect, reflect, parallel, comprehend, challenge and confront the views of our world with the world of the play. Dramaturgy is the practice-based and practice-led method of analysing and staging the dramatic work. Dramaturgy is a means of reinforcing the themes and issues inherent in the play by drawing on textual and contextual analysis to reveal connections with our world and the world of the play. In a sense, dramaturgy and scenography are 2 sides of the same coin. They share the same goals, they go hand in hand, and they must be united when we make theatre. Peter Brook's familiar and foundational statement is that theatre is one person walking across an empty space while another observes. What does this mean, real spaces, in these times of crisis? And can theatre only exist in these spaces if it's real? What about new digital or virtual spaces? While artists sought solutions by digital means, online platforms, and streaming services. Something was still missing. That unattainable, unexplainable, euphoric feeling we all get when we sit in a shared space. There's that sense of liveness and aliveness. Desperate to find a way to retain that sense of live and ephemeral, I developed and employed a dramaturgical methodology called Pandemic, Epidemic and Body Performance, PEEP. The PEEP methodology considered both the scenographic and dramaturgical elements of theatre. PEEP was a large perspex box that surrounded the performance space on 3 sides, with an entrance upstage. It was performed in an unconventional, non-theatrical space and sought to protect the actors and audiences as separate bubbles during the pandemic. The screens borrowed from the engineering department were actually ballistic-proof screens. If the audiences didn't like the performance, they certainly couldn't shoot the messenger. PEEP was also a dramaturgical methodology of rehearsal and performance. The glass box was influenced and was influential in the ways we analysed the text, the context, the themes, and made directorial choices. In these ways, we were able to create a world in which the audience could view the play, in its themes and parallels and archetypes, while examining their own realities. Using the PEEP methodology in this production of Antigone, we made connections with the crisis of the play and the Theban family, and drew on the similarities to the politics surrounding the COVID crisis. PEEP was also a scenographic method of care and addressed the importance of keeping our actors and our audiences safe during the COVID crisis. This pandemic has also highlighted that theatre and its people are taonga, or precious possessions. In theatre, we have a duty of care to protect the people of the theatre, our actors, our audiences, and our crews. COVID care in our production of Antigone was demonstrated through 2 mediums, dramaturgy and scenography. We can demonstrate active cares in the way we design appropriate scenography that can keep our actors and audiences safe. Our scenography included a large glass box, using glass screens made familiar during the COVID crisis, and the ones seen to isolate and separate face-to-face contact with others in hospitals, supermarkets, and banks. The glass box became a bubble of protection for the actors from the audience. It became an isolated bubble of conflict from the characters to the outside world. The audience were also able to see themselves reflected in the bubble, and thus into the story. The scenography became a method of rehearsal, where actors were able to take cues off each other without looking directly at each other. We were able to address the COVID crisis advertently and inadvertently. The cleansing of the theatre space became a part of the performance, and the chorus was seen to be cleaning the box as the audience entered the theatre. Theatre is considered by many of us as a taonga, a precious possession. It stood the test of time for over 2,000 years. While theatre has endured many crises and the trials and tribulations that have come with them, the pandemic has shown that theatre is a fragile being. A UNESCO report published in February of 2022 highlighted the impact suffered by the international creative industry over the pandemic. This report showed that many countries saw a drop of 20 to 40% in annual revenue from cultural and arts projects, with a global gross loss of 750 billion in 2020. The report also emphasised the difficulties artists face in attempting to move to digital platforms, highlighting greater inequalities of internet and access to technology, and the disparity between the value that streaming platforms extract from content and the revenue generated by those who create and invest in creation. In New Zealand, the arts and cultural sector annually contributes 10.8 billion to the GDP and provides more than 92,000 jobs that have otherwise been lost due to the pandemic. Regardless of the financial losses to the arts sector, UNESCO describes that the essential value of cultural and creative sector as an instrument of social cohesion, educational resource, and well-being for people in times of crisis was the greatest loss during this pandemic. The call for theatres across the world to open was a sign of our collective desire for imagination and storytelling. and our inherent requirement as humans to share collective spaces. This pandemic has shown that theatre is fragile. The pandemic has taken theatre to the brink of its existence. With these and future crises in mind, theatre must adapt to keep it alive and live. When I began this research journey, I don't think I fully considered all the stresses and strains that would come with trying to make theatre in these unprecedented and unpredictable times. Perhaps this is the end for theatre. Perhaps we should just move to digital mediums and in doing so create new mediums of performance. Well, I was determined that Antigone would follow Brooke's precepts of live theatre. I was most concerned that people might not even come and see the performance. Would they want to come back to a theatre again and be in shared spaces during the pandemic? Would they even want to come and see theatre again, now in this new digital age when we can view theatre from our homes? Would audiences want to purge their emotions at a Greek tragedy when these times are already so challenging? Don Taylor, on staging Ancient Greek Tragedy, says that these plays provide moments which are almost unendurable to read and must, in the playing, touch on emotions and levels of experience we would rather not contemplate. So I ask you now, what should our responses be as dramaturges, directors, researchers and scenographers for a new world of theatre in this crisis, and a crisis beyond the pandemic? How do we keep our ancient art form alive and live? I want to invite you to take the time after this talk to draw, to write a thought, a picture, and fold it up and keep it in your pocket. And next time that you feel that we are facing a crisis again, to be inspired as to how you might create theatre in crisis. And so I leave you with this Māori proverb, E auria te tuatara ka puta ke waho. A problem is solved by continuing to find solutions. So go forth to keep this art form alive and live, fau fia te teke mā tauranga, and fill the basket of knowledge.